Who would win in a battle between Olympic champions, Quincy Hall or Letsile Tebogo, over the 400-meter dash right now? I'm going to talk about their strengths, their weaknesses, and then ultimately make my prediction. So first, let's start off with the defending champion, Quincy Hall. So Quincy Hall's strengths is he has the biggest engine out of any sprinter in the world. What does that mean? So Quincy Hall is an unorthodox 400-meter runner, and especially an unorthodox 400-meter champion. For the most part in history, 400-meter runners start from the shorter sprints and work their way up. Quincy Hall is, in fact, the opposite. He worked his way down. He ran the 1,500-meter dash. He ran cross-country. He ran the 800 meters, then the 400-meter hurdles, and then recently, in the last couple of years, he switched to the 400 open. And it's worked. It's paid off. So if you look at the way he races, he's never the guy who puts the blitz in the first 200. He runs his own race and then comes in like a train at the end. There's no one closing stronger than Quincy Hall because his legs have the muscle memory of grueling out longer races. And that's very helpful in the last 50 of the 400. He might be dying, but it's nothing new to him because he's ran races where he's suffering for over 1,000 meters at least. So 400 is a piece of cake to him mentally. It's just his body is catching up, and it shows. He's ran 43.4, he's ran 43.8, and a 43.95 all in the same year, so he's not a one-time fluke. He can definitely put up a performance when you need it. So that's another plus. And now let's go into his weaknesses. So Quincy Hall, this is actually going to refer to my previous point. He's a longer distance guy that has worked his way down. So what does that mean? He was never a natural speedy person. And that's ironic because he's won his NCAA title in the 400-meter hurdles with his speed at the end. Or maybe it was his strength, but it looked like speed to me. But Quincy Hall does not have the 100-meter speed or the 200-meter speed to compete against a Letsile Tebogo, right? I don't think he's ever ran sub-20 or sub-10 in his life. So if someone puts the pace really hard, like an exceptional strong pace, in the first 200, that might sway Quincy Hall off of his race. I've never seen that happen yet, but it's a possibility with the opponent he's going against. So we know that he's not going to out-blitz and run away from somebody. He's going to have to catch them down most of the time. So now let's go with our defending Olympic champion in Letsile Tebogo for the 200-meter dash, all right? So Letsile Tebogo is a younger guy, I think, than Quincy Hall. So not that it really matters, but he's going to definitely have the energy to put up one hell of a race. So Letsile Tebogo's strengths is he has the speed that Quincy Hall does not have, or in general. Not many people have Letsile Tebogo's speed. He has a world junior record in the 100 and a PR of 9.86 that he ran in the Olympic final. That could have won gold in many other Olympics, or certainly medal for sure. But he was in the fastest 100-meter final in history, and he showed up and showed out. There was just better men that day. But he definitely has the speed, and he has proven to show up in Olympic finals, like in the 200-meter dash, where he ran a 19.46 PR, beating Noah Lyles and Kenny Bednar. So he doesn't fold under pressure. If he loses, it's because the better man showed up that day. It's not because Letsile Tebogo underperformed, because he PR'd in the 100 and he PR'd in the 200. So he's showing up with the best condition he can present, and if it wins gold, it wins gold. If he doesn't, well, that's too bad, but we're certainly not going to be disappointed that he underperformed. He always gives good performances in a final. So that's a big plus to him. So on top of his speed, there's one thing that he has that may have the edge over Quincy Hall, or at least break even with Quincy Hall, and that's strength. Quincy Hall may be a little stronger than Letsile Tebogo, or maybe a good amount, but Letsile Tebogo is not your typical 100, 200-meter sprinter. A 200-meter has some strength, but Letsile Tebogo has way more strength than the typical 200-meter average runner, because Letsile Tebogo has a 300-meter world record and an open flat PR in the 400 that is 44 low. And he split a 43.03, third fastest split in history. So I know based on the speed, the strength, his performances in the Olympics, Letsile Tebogo can run a sub 44 400 meter dash. But how low can he run it? Is it enough to beat Quincy Hall? Well, now I'm going to make my choice. Who would win right now if they're both healthy? Well, interestingly enough, I want to say Letsile Tebogo can actually beat Quincy Hall, despite Quincy Hall being the fourth fastest man ever with the 43.40. Here's why I want to say him. Because Letsile Tebogo has the speed to destroy everyone else. And let me get further into that. So Wade Van Niekerk, when he ran his 400-meter world record, had a PR of 19.94 in the 200, and he ran 43.03. I know Michael Johnson ran 19.32, but only ran 43.18. He just didn't have the competition. Otherwise, he would have ran a sub 43 easy. But Letsile Tebogo, if he runs this race like Wade Van Niekerk, which would be the strategy to beat Quincy Hall. There's no other way he would beat Quincy Hall. Do not get in a drag race in the last 50 with him. He has to put on the burners, and he has the speed to put on the burners. If he ran that race like Wade Van Niekerk, I think Letsile Tebogo can run a 43.2 or 43.3 max. He's not going to run any slower than that in a championship final against Quincy Hall. All right? Based on what I'm seeing right now. If he put in another month of endurance work for the 400, then he could break the world record. But based on what I saw in the Paris Olympic Games, he's not running a world record. He's running close to it, but not enough. And I want to say Letsile Tebogo would beat Quincy Hall. He has the capability. He just might. But I'm going to choose Quincy Hall for one main reason, guys. Quincy Hall would beat Letsile Tebogo in a 400-meter dash right now, if healthy, because Quincy Hall's ceiling in the 400, I think, is higher than Letsile Tebogo's. And that's crazy to say. Maybe not that much higher, but higher. And here's why. Because Quincy Hall could have ran the first 200 much faster. And, let me turn off the audio here. Okay, it's off. Look how far behind he is. If he would have been closer to Karani James or Matthew Hudson-Smith off that turn, I still believe Quincy Hall would have closed just as hard and ran a 43.1. Even Michael Johnson said that Quincy Hall could have executed that race way better. Look at Quincy Hall. He's not even dead. The guy from Trinidad and Tobago right there, he was barely running over the line. He was just using his momentum to carry himself over, and he ran a 43.7. Quincy Hall ran a 43.4 and was making snow angels on the track. And he was jogging after. So he wasn't dead. He had the capability and energy to run even faster. He just didn't execute his race right. So given the fact that Quincy Hall ran a 43.4 with poor execution of the race, in my opinion, I believe that Quincy Hall could really break the world record. We know to run a low 43, you don't need to have speed as a mandatory, because we saw Wade Van Niekerk break Michael Johnson's world record despite being 0.6 or 0.5 slower than Michael Johnson in the 200. Okay? And we saw Michael Norman, who's ran 19.7, run a 43.5, but Quincy Hall is way slower than Michael Norman in the 200. But he now has a better PR than Norman in the 400. I know Quincy Hall has enough speed to break the world record right now. So if he were to execute this race plan against a guy like Letsile Tebogo, who would run the first 300 like a monster, it would make Hudson-Smith look like a joke over the first 300. Quincy Hall would be forced to run close enough with Letsile Tebogo in this imaginary race, and he would get Tebogo at the 10-meter mark or 15 meters. No, 10 meters before they cross the line. That's when he would pass Tebogo and get gold. And the times would be 42.95 for Quincy Hall or 42.92. And then Letsile Tebogo would be a 43.2. That's what I predict. And this is how I imagine this race going right now. Quincy Hall can execute a better race. He's in the best shape of his life right now. And he ran a 43.4. If he runs that race in a better style format, he can definitely go after that world record right now if he was healthy. And Letsile Tebogo, he can definitely in the future, in my opinion, if both of these men ran for the 400-meter world record and aim to be the greatest of all time, I think Letsile Tebogo would win that. So if they race right now, Letsile would not win, even though I think he could beat every other guy, maybe even Matthew Hudson Smith. But Quincy Hall, I don't think he could beat him right now. But overall, in the history books, at the end of the day, I believe Letsile Tebogo can break the world record and run a faster PR all-time over Quincy Hall. Okay? So that's my take. Letsile Tebogo, I want to see him run the 400 and race Quincy Hall in real life. But if it were to happen right now, I got to take the defending champion, Quincy Hall, the dog.